Hi, my name is Philip, and today we're going to be talking about the OS, or the operating system. Now, the operating system, or OS, is the base system of a device, whether it be a computer, server, or a cell phone. It makes sure that the connection between hardware and software works, and therefore we need to have it, or we need to have one of them. There are several. So the operating system is the link between the hardware and the software. It's needed to adapt a bunch of different hardware manufacturers and models to a standard for applications to work. The base layer of the operating system, also known as HAL or Hardware Abstraction Layer, communicates with the hardware and creates what you may call a virtual computer that are independent of which hardware that is used. No matter what hardware is in the computer, HAL will offer the same functions to the upper layer of the operating system, also known as API or Application Programming Interface. Now, if we didn't have an operating system like Windows, for instance, or Mac OS or Linux, every application like Word, PowerPoint, Finder or Safari or Google Chrome, every application will have to be optimized for every new model of computer and hardware. So take for instance, every time you would get a new graphics card or a new processor, you'd have to update or install the right version of the program that you're using or the application. That would be a tough one. There are two types of multitasking. You have the cooperative multitasking, where the applications control if anyone else needs the processor. In other words, if a program crashes, the whole system may crash. This type of multitasking were used pre-Windows 95, so it's very old, and it's one of the reasons those versions of Windows were unstable. And then we have the preemptive multitasking, where the operating system interrupts from time to time to check the status of the application or the applications. This lets us end an application that has crashed without the whole system going down. On the downside, it makes the computer tiny bit slower than if we were using cooperative multitasking. But in this day and era, it's not noticeable. You won't notice it. Windows NT and every following version of the NT family uses preemptive multitasking. Now let's have a look at some concepts and terms. A process or processes are active applications in the computer, even those that are run in the background, like an antivirus application or a bunch of processes that the operating system are running. Threads are smaller parts of a process. Some processes are split into different threads to enhance the performance. We touched a bit on virtual memory in the last video when we talked about RAM, but it is used by the operating system when the RAM isn't enough. It is a reserved part of the secondary memory as a page file. When the RAM is full, some of the lesser used content is written to the page file, which works as a slower extension of RAM. Virtual machine, or VM, is created with something called a hypervisor. This can be either an operating system, like VMware, or an application like Hyper-V or VirtualBox. It makes it possible to create multiple virtual computers or servers in the same physical computer. Every VM has its own operating system, whether it be Windows, Linux or something else. It works as if it were installed directly on the computer with full access to network, disk space, RAM, etc. Now, there's a lot of advantages in using virtual machines, such as the fact that you don't need a ton of heat generating hardware in your house that will also let your electrical bill make you bankrupt with today's prices of electricity. Now, moving to interrupt or interrupt request or IRQ is used to enable interrupts in an application that is running. For instance, if a signal from an input, such as a mouse or a keyboard, is sent to the device, that needs to be taken care of. So then an interrupt will be generated and the process that is currently running is stopped for a short amount of time so that the signal can be processed. And after that the previous running process can continue. DMA, or direct memory access, is used when a component in the computer should be allowed direct access to RAM without the need to go through the CPU. Now that we've talked about what an operating system is, we'll have a look at some common ones for computers. First up is Windows. The version that you can see in the slide is built on the NT family. There are others, but these are the ones that you may bump into at a company. And yes, there are still computers with Windows XP and Windows 7 out there, even though 7 has been end of support since January 2020 and XP since April of 2014. Now, end of support means that the developer, in this case Microsoft, isn't sending out any new updates to that version. When it comes to Apple products, they have an operating system called Mac OS. Well, it was called Mac OS up until version 9 that was released in 1999. And when they released version 10, they changed the name to Mac OS X. And then in 2016, when Mac OS 10.12 Sierra was released, they changed it back to Mac OS to streamline the branding with their other primary operating systems, such as iOS for phones, watchOS for watches, and tvOS for TVs, or the Apple TV. Linux has a Unix-like core. The development started in 1991 by Linus Torvalds, who at the time was a student at Helsinki University. It has been further developed by thousands of volunteer programmers around the world. It's a freeware with open source, which means that anybody can use it. There is a lot of different distributions with different orientations. The most common GUI, or graphical user interface, is KDE and GNOME. Now that we've talked about operating systems for a computer, we're gonna have a little touch on mobile devices as well. Windows Phone, which the name might tell, is a Windows OS for phones. That hasn't really become popular, at least not here in Sweden. I don't know about the rest of the world, but here in Sweden it's not that popular. Brands that use Windows Phone is Nokia, LG, and of course Microsoft themselves. And then we have iOS. That is the operating system that Apple use for all their mobile devices, such as iPhone and iPad. And then we have Android, which is built upon Linux, owned by Google, and can be found on the majority of makes and models, like Samsung, HTC, Sony, just to mention some of them. Now, if there is something you'd like me to make a future video about, leave a comment down below, and if you found this information helpful, or if you at least found that you learned something, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribe so that you don't miss future videos. And if you didn't like the video, try playing it in half speed and see if that makes it better or worse. Until next time, have a good one. Bye!